You're watching IntoWineTV. I'm your host, Lisa Kolenda. Today we're at Cobb Wine Bar and Kitchen in San Francisco, where we're doing a blind tasting.
So there's a ripe quality in the nose, that's the first thing.
Ripe is being generous. I'd say sweet. Is this a late harvest wine? It's incredibly sweet on the nose.
I haven't tasted it yet.
On the palate, it's got a dry finish, a dry palate, but the nose indicates so much sugar.
Well, it has like a little bit of a caraway seed aroma in the nose. Made me think there's probably some American oak that could also contribute to sort of the sweet character that you're referring to. Yeah, there's a lot of fruit, a lot of really, really ripe fruit.
Or chaptalization maybe. But it's, to me, it's chaptalization is addition of sugar, but it's probably not. It's probably just overripe fruit.
Yeah, I think so.
When you say additional sugar, you mean after the wine's been?
Well, in some countries you're allowed to add sugar because the grapes don't naturally get ripe enough. France, for instance. In America,
during fermentation.
Yeah, America it's not so common if it happens at all, because the grapes ripen naturally they ripen too much here. I think people should pick grapes earlier when they're less ripe, when they've otherwise you have results like this, which are just overly sweet wines. And I can't
yeah, it's
imagine
definitely a New World wine.
Yeah, I can't imagine putting food with this because the sweetness is on the nose. It's just.
You know what would work with something like this? Again, not something I would eat, but if you did like baby back ribs with sort of like a honeyed glaze, or something like that, like something like barbecue, but not a really, really hot sauce, because there's a good amount of alcohol, and if it's super spicy, it's only going to accentuate the alcohol. That's why I said something like maybe with like a honey glaze, so that it sort of counters some of that.
I was going to say it's a well-made wine, just
in the style that it is.
Yeah, in the style that it is. But the trouble is, to me, the palate is disjointed because it's got the sweetness, but it's actually a very dry wine on the finish, and the two don't seem to meld well together.
Right, but it does have a nice finish. The finish has good length. I mean, it's very fruity. I'm getting a little bit of that sort of the caraway dill thing going on, which, again, I might be wrong, but I suspect that's from American oak. And there's a lot of ripe fruit. And my guess is it's probably Zin. Again, I would be wrong.
And I also think the alcohol is a little bit disjointed on this one. It's possibly too high in alcohol as well.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. But I think it's just granted, depends on the price. And my guess is that it's probably about a $25 wine retail. I wouldn't say I love it. It doesn't blow me away, but it's fine. If I were at a wedding and somebody gave me a glass of this, I'd probably drink it.
I would want to see it under $15.
Under 15?
Personally, I wouldn't buy this.
Well, of course I would want to see it under 15, but the way the market is, and I have tasted and do taste wines that are not even as good as this, that are kind of have a similar flavor profile, that are in the 25, 30 and up price category.
A bit of licorice too.
Yeah.
Do you find that when people are ordering a red wine, they don't want necessarily sweet? This sweet?
Gosh, it's very interesting. I get this a lot where people will say, I want a red and I don't want something sweet. Well, unless it's port, red wines are dry. There are some red wines that have a very small amount of residual sugar, but for the most part, red wines are dry, unless it's like port or something like a Recioto del Valpolicella, something like that. This wine definitely has a little residual sugar, but I want to say it's a sweet wine. But it's very interesting because we were discussing earlier about, people who, I would mention that some of the best tasters are people who are not in the business. Most people don't have the vocabulary to describe what they like. And it's not that they're stupid, it's just that when you're not working with wine all the time, or it's something that you're into, you just don't have it. It would sort of be like me trying to talk, neurosurgery with someone. And how people describe wine, or learning how to describe wine is something that often comes with tasting and tasting with other people. And a lot of people just don't do that.
Shall we see what it is?
Let's see what it is.
This is a 2005 Tres Sabores Zinfandel. It's a Napa wine, retails for $19 a bottle.
Well, I'm relieved about the price. At least it's not overly priced. I would have wanted to pay about $15 for it if I bought it at all. But who's the winemaker on this? Do you know?
The winemaker is Julie Johnson. She's also the CEO and CFO.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for $19 a bottle, I feel that it is. I think it's priced properly. Truthfully, I'm not saying she should, but she could charge more, and people will buy it. Bartholomew won't, but other people will. And I'm not saying I would either. But it's just that it is in definitely the same level of wines that are more expensive.
Okay.
And I think 15% alcohol is too high for this wine. I think it's disjointed. One thing I do find attractive about this is the shape of the bottle. It's about the one thing I like most about this wine.
See, I don't think that the alcohol is too high. Zinfandel needs to have a certain level of alcohol. I remember when I was first getting into the business in 1990, and there was a movement sort of in the late 80s that Zinfandel had too much alcohol and tried to make wines that had less alcohol. And with Zinfandel, it's really hard to do that. If you make because it's a late ripening grape, and usually when it's picked, it has so much sugar inherently that it's very difficult to do that. And if you try to make a wine that doesn't have that has low alcohol, low being, let's say, under 14, low being relative, but for Zin, let's say, being under 14, it's often going to seem a little bit disjointed and unbalanced. I think that
I would beg to differ, because when I moved to the States in, it was about 85-ish, 85, and the Zins were my favorite wines. I mean, I loved the duck soup Zin and the stuff like that, but Dave Damasny makes great Zins, but now I can't stand Zins, especially, I mean, we had one which I liked, which was high alcohol, about 16% alcohol wine, but generally I find Zinfandels today are like this. They're just too alcoholic, disjointed. If you go to Zap,
which I refuse to do,
and taste your old Zins, there may be a couple that I like out of 500. It's a shame.
I agree with you. I'm definitely not a big Zinfandel drinker. As a matter of fact, I don't really drink Zinfandel at all, other than when I'm tasting wine for the restaurant. But again, so putting it in sort of the same category of other similar wines, I think it holds up better than a lot of other ones I've had. I don't think it's the best Zinfandel I've ever had, but I think it's good. I think it's solid. I don't really find the alcohol to be disjointed, but people taste things differently.
Okay, great. Great feedback. So this has been the 2005 Tres Sabores, and thanks for joining us.